This talk is all about how I took control of my life from something that I used to believe I had no control over. I changed my thoughts, and I went from viewing Lyme disease as a curse to something that I now truly believe is one of my life's greatest blessings. Lyme has been a harrowing journey, but it is something that I am extraordinarily grateful for. It's something that I wouldn't trade for the world now, given the chance. It will be 6 years ago, this July, that I first started to experience symptoms. I first started to feel unwell. It started with a bump on my leg, the worst flu I had ever had, periodic lymphatic swelling, and anxiety. I went undiagnosed for 4.5 years, so my symptoms progressed, they went untreated, and they progressed to the point that I had to leave the job that I was in. I couldn't work for 7 months. I had numbness and tingling through my extremities, brain fog, difficulty grasping for words, difficulty putting thoughts together, oxygen hunger, exhaustion, and food sensitivities, just to name a few. The physical and neurological symptoms were difficult, but what made them so much worse was how I viewed them. I moved in and out of periods of deep frustration as I focused on all the things that Lyme was taking away from me. But it was in one of these periods of frustration and anger that I recognized a pattern. I've since been introduced to a video of Jim Rohn speaking, discussing the 4 types of life-changing days. One of those days is disgust. He says it is a negative emotion with a powerful effect. It is the day you say, "I have had it." This pattern that I recognized wasn't just a pattern with Lyme disease. This was a pattern that I had been experiencing my entire life, from the time that I was 6 or 7 years old. You see, I recognized that struggle and challenge were not new to me. Feeling like a victim of my circumstances was not new to me. Feeling out of control of my life was not new to me. These were things that I had been experiencing long before Lyme. And I got to that point that Jim Rohn spoke of. I had had enough of feeling that way. I knew that I didn't really have control over Lyme disease. I knew that I did have control over my thoughts, but that wasn't something that I had ever exercised before. Because I had been so focused on all the things that Lyme was taking away from me, it felt right for me to focus on all the things that Lyme was giving me, the gifts of Lyme disease. But to be honest, that idea felt absurd at the time because I wasn't sure there were any. But I had nothing else to go on and I was desperate. So I just sat with it. And eventually, I did recognize that there was one gift that had been present almost from the very beginning of this journey. And that was the gift of self-care. Prior to Lyme disease, I had zero concept of what self-care was. I did not know what it meant for me to tap into my body, to feel for what I needed, and then to give that to myself. That had never happened once consciously prior to Lyme disease. And now it happens all the time. I truly don't believe that without something as significant as a health crisis, that would have changed, that I would have been reconnected to my body in that way. Now, it did take a little bit longer, but I was able to identify other gifts of Lyme. My self-worth had actually increased. I used to associate my self-worth with what I could do. I would run myself ragged, trying to prove my worth for whatever it was that I wanted. And with Lyme, I physically could not do that anymore. So I had to learn over time to reassociate my self-worth with who I was instead of what I could do. Lyme had also been a really empowering journey. When my symptoms first really took a turn for the worse, my medical doctor wasn't very supportive. Through no fault of her own, we had done every test she could think of, but nothing was coming back positive, and she just didn't know what else to do. I left one of our appointments and I was extremely angry with her. But I remember that I asked myself, was I going to sit here and continue to blame her? Was I going to sit here and wait for her to tell me what to do and where to go? Or was I going to take this into my own hands? And that's what I decided to do. I assembled my own team of natural health care practitioners. I radically changed my diet to better support my body. And I learned as much as I could about what I was experiencing and how I could help myself. Lyme had given me some invaluable life lessons. Identifying those gifts was a huge turning point for me. I didn't feel nearly as much of that anger and frustration. I felt much more in control of my life. And I even started to enjoy myself again. But I recognized I wasn't quite done shifting how I viewed that experience, because there were still times where the frustration would well up out of my control, and it felt like I was hitting a wall that I just couldn't seem to break through. I had identified the gifts of Lyme disease, but there was still a part of me that was seeing Lyme disease as being in my way. I saw it as being in the way of the dreams that I had and the life that I wanted to live. But I had no control over Lyme. I sat with the gifts of Lyme disease. I knew that there had been a lot of good here. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this thought struck me. What if Lyme was trying to show me another way? Maybe instead of it being an obstacle, it was actually my path. And in that moment, I felt the power of that thought move through my body, like the hair standing up on the back of my neck, and I knew that that was true for me. That moment, that morning, I made the decision, as simple as it sounds, but the emotion was so strong. I decided I was not going to see Lyme as an obstacle anymore. I was going to see it as my path, and I was going to follow it wherever it was trying to take me. I have not, since that morning, felt that same anger and frustration. I see Lyme disease as a blessing because I have changed for the better having had it. I have grown in ways I couldn't have imagined. I have learned an immense amount about myself and about my life. Oftentimes, our blessings come disguised as something else. And only through changing how we view them can we uncover the gifts that they are trying to give us. I know that there likely aren't many of you here tonight who have Lyme. I do know that there are a few of you, at least, who are experiencing some sort of health challenge. This isn't just health related. Almost all of us have circumstances or situations in our lives that we feel out of control of, that we feel are in our way, whether it be health, career, relationships, or finances. If you view those situations as being an obstacle or as being something that is holding you back, that is all they ever will be. I challenge you to look for the gifts in this situation, to get curious. What is it teaching you? Where are you growing? Where is it redirecting you to? Look for the gifts until you find them, and then focus on those gifts until you are able to see this as having purpose in your greater life's path. Life is always happening for us. Follow it, explore it, and it will lead you exactly where you need to go. Thank you.